The millionaire paid his poor maid to be his wife for 6 months, but begged her to stay forever. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Rain poured over the glass walls of the Reed mansion, each drop tracing silver lines down the wide windows. The night smelled of cedar wood and thunder. Inside, the light glowed cold and deliberate. Alexander Reed sat behind his mahogany desk, a man whose posture carried the calm of someone used to control. 34 years old, self-made millionaire, heir to a legacy that demanded perfection. Yet tonight, even perfection seemed to shake under the weight of scandal. He looked up when the door opened. Sofia Alvarez stepped inside, still in her faded uniform, the edges damp from the rain. Her brown eyes held both confusion and defiance. She had been fired that morning, accused of causing a scene in front of the press while defending him from a false rumor. She had spoken too loudly, and now she was paying for it. "I do not understand why you called me back, Mr. Reed," she said quietly. "I already signed the dismissal papers." Alexander leaned back in his chair. "Sit down, Sofia." His voice was even, unhurried. "I have a proposal." She hesitated before sitting, clutching her worn handbag. "My family trust requires that I be married before the end of this quarter," he said. "If I am not, the controlling shares of Reed Industries will pass to my cousin Damien. I cannot allow that to happen." Sofia frowned. "What does that have to do with me?" He opened a folder and pushed a document toward her. The paper looked heavy, almost royal. "Marry me. For 6 months." Her breath caught. "What?" "It is a contract marriage," he said. "Strictly legal, no emotional involvement. In return, you will receive $300,000, enough to pay your mother's hospital bills and start over after." She blinked, stunned. The words sounded unreal, like they belonged to a movie she had no ticket for. "You cannot be serious." "I am always serious." He folded his hands. "You need help. I need a wife on paper. It is a business transaction." Sofia stared at the contract, then at him. The rain outside grew louder, filling the silence between them. "Why me? You could find anyone." Alexander's gaze did not waver. "Because you have already proven one thing most people around me do not have. Integrity. You defended me when everyone else stayed silent. You risked your job for it." Her throat tightened. She thought of her mother, lying in the hospital bed at St. Mary's Hospital, the oxygen machine humming through the night. The doctor had said the surgery had to be soon. "This is wrong," she whispered. "So is dying poor for doing the right thing," he replied, voice soft but cutting. "Sign it, Sofia. 6 months. Then you walk away free." "Oh." Lightning flashed, painting his face in stark light and shadow. She stared at the pen, her heart pounding. Pride screamed, "No." But desperation whispered yes. Slowly, she reached out. "If I agree," she said, "there will be rules. There already are." Her hand shook as she signed her name. Alexander stood, extending his hand. "Welcome to our arrangement, Mrs. Reed." The thunder rolled through the mansion as she rose, her palm brushing his for the first time. For a brief second, warmth flickered between them, uninvited, human, and dangerously real. Outside, the storm raged on, sealing the deal that would change both of their lives forever. The next morning, soft light filtered through the tall windows of the mansion. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of thunder and wet earth. Sofia Alvarez stood by the window, wrapped in a borrowed robe that hung too wide on her shoulders. She had barely slept. The ink on her signature was still drying on the contract that had changed everything. In another part of the house, Alexander Reed finished a phone call with his lawyer. His voice was calm, composed, but there was a weight behind each word. "Yes. File the papers today. The ceremony will be civil, no press." He ended the call and exhaled slowly. For a man known for confidence, he looked strangely uncertain. When he entered the dining room, Sofia was already there, standing awkwardly beside the table set for two. The silverware gleamed beneath the morning light, too polished for her comfort. She lowered her gaze as he approached. "You did not have to call me so early," she said softly. "I needed to confirm details," he replied. "The wedding will take place tomorrow afternoon. It will be private. After that, you will move into the master suite." Sophia's eyes widened. "We have not even rehearsed anything. What if someone asks questions?" "You will be prepared." He opened a folder, sliding a stack of papers toward her. "These are your talking points. Where we met, how long we dated. Small things, believable enough." She stared at the papers, her name written beside his in perfect cursive. "This feels like I am stealing someone else's life." He met her eyes. "It is only temporary." But something in his tone carried a shadow of doubt. That afternoon, Sophia visited St. Mary's Hospital. The hum of machines filled the quiet hallways. Her mother, pale but conscious, smiled weakly when Sophia entered. "You came back," her mother whispered. "How did the interview go?" Sophia hesitated, forcing a smile. "It went better than expected. I got a new job. A good one." Her mother squeezed her hand, the IV tube trembling slightly. "I knew you would find your way." Sophia blinked back tears. The lie sat heavy on her tongue, but she reminded herself that the truth could wait. Right now, all that mattered was saving her. When Sophia returned to the mansion that evening, she found a box on her bed. Inside was an elegant dress in ivory silk and a note written in careful, deliberate handwriting. "For tomorrow, it will fit. A.R." She traced the initials with her fingers. The fabric shimmered under the lamp, soft and foreign against her skin. She had never worn anything so fine. The next day passed like a dream she could not wake from. At the small courthouse in downtown Chicago, the ceremony was brief and quiet. 2 signatures, 2 witnesses, a handful of words that turned strangers into husband and wife. When the officiant said, "You may exchange rings," Alexander slipped a simple gold band onto her finger. For a fleeting moment, his thumb brushed against her hand, steady and warm. "Congratulations," the clerk said. "You are now legally married." Sophia managed a faint smile, her heart pounding. She looked up at Alexander, but his expression was unreadable, somewhere between duty and something softer. They left the courthouse under a cloudy sky. Cameras clicked in the distance, but his driver ushered them quickly into the black sedan waiting by the curb. Inside the car, silence filled the space between them. Sophia stared out the window, the city lights flickering like stars trapped behind glass. Alexander spoke first. "You will move into the West Wing. The staff will treat you as Mrs. Reed. It is important that everyone believes this." She nodded slowly. "And what should I believe?" He looked at her, a flicker of regret crossing his eyes. "Believe that this will be over soon. 6 months. Then your life will be your own again." The car turned into the long driveway of the mansion. The iron gates closed behind them with a low metallic sound, sealing her new reality. Sophia stepped out, the wind tugging at her dress. Somewhere deep inside, she felt the weight of every decision that had brought her here. Fear, hope, and something nameless, rising like a tide. That night, as the mansion lights dimmed, Sophia stood on the balcony outside her room. The city stretched beyond the hills, silent and unreachable. She touched the ring on her finger. It felt cold, but real. In another wing, Alexander watched her from his study window, a glass of bourbon in his hand. He told himself this was strategy, nothing more. But as the moonlight caught the curve of her face, he realized that pretending might not be as simple as he had planned. Morning sunlight streamed through the Reed mansion, catching on the crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. Sofia Alvarez followed the housekeeper through the long hallway, her shoes echoing softly. Everything around her looked expensive and distant, like a museum she was not supposed to touch. She still could not believe she was living here now. In her room, a wardrobe stood open with rows of elegant dresses, handbags, and heels arranged by color. A handwritten note was taped to the mirror. 10 o'clock meeting with the stylist. Noon etiquette rehearsal. Dinner at 7. It was signed with the same initials, A.R. The transformation began quickly. The stylist, a woman named Clara, circled Sophia like an artist sizing up her canvas. "You have potential," she said. "Good posture, kind eyes, but your hands tell your story. We will fix that. Manicure, hair treatment, makeup lessons, fittings, each day blurred into the next. Sophia did everything she was told, learning which fork to use, how to walk without rushing, how to smile without showing too much uncertainty. Still, she could not shake the feeling that she was acting in someone else's life. During lunch breaks, she sat by the window, sketching small drawings on napkins, something familiar to remind herself who she was before all this. One afternoon, Alexander walked in unexpectedly. She froze, the pencil still in her hand. "What is that?" he asked. "Nothing," she said quickly, folding the paper. He stepped closer, unfolding it anyway. It was a sketch of the garden outside. Accurate, detailed, alive. His voice softened. "You drew this?" "Yes, it helps me think." He looked at the lines for a long moment. "You should not hide this." Sophia blinked, unsure whether it was praise or command. Before she could answer, he placed the drawing back on the table and left without another word. That evening, they dined together for the first time as husband and wife. The dining hall was long, the candles steady in their holders. Sophia sat at one end, Alexander at the other. The silence between them stretched until she decided to speak. "Do you always eat alone like this?" "Most of the time," he replied. "It keeps things uncomplicated." "And now?" He set down his fork. "Now, things are complicated." The next day, Sophia joined him at a charity event, their first public appearance. Flashbulbs erupted as they stepped from the car. The cameras loved Alexander Reed, tall, poised, every movement controlled. But when Sophia appeared beside him, the crowd's murmurs turned sharp. "Is that her?" someone whispered. "The maid?" Sophia heard it, and for a second, her chest tightened. But she kept walking, chin high, just as Clara had taught her. Inside the ballroom, she smiled politely, greeted strangers, and tried to keep her trembling hands still. A reporter cornered her near the champagne table. "Mrs. Reed, could you tell us how you and your husband met?" Sophia hesitated, then remembered the script Alexander had given her. "At a business conference, we shared a conversation about art and coffee." The reporter smiled thinly. "Interesting. You worked here before, did you not? As staff?" Before she could answer, Alexander appeared at her side. "My wife has nothing more to add," he said, his tone firm but not angry. He led her away, hand resting lightly on her back. When they reached the balcony, Sophia exhaled shakily. "They know," she said. "Let them talk," he replied. "You did well." His words carried weight, not warmth, but somehow they steadied her. Later that night, Sophia walked into her room and found another note waiting on her desk. "You handled yourself with dignity, A.R." She read it twice before folding it carefully into her sketchbook. Days turned into weeks. The household staff began treating her differently, some with respect, others with quiet resentment. She learned to smile through both. Alexander, true to his word, kept things professional, though his gaze sometimes lingered longer than it should. One evening, she found him standing in the garden under the soft glow of the path lights. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of roses. "You have changed this place," he said, almost to himself. Sophia tilted her head. "I have only been here a few weeks." "Sometimes a few weeks is enough," he replied. For the first time, she saw something unguarded in his eyes, a loneliness that wealth could not hide. As she walked back to her room that night, Sophia realized the contract had rules, but her heart was beginning to forget them. She was supposed to play a role, but somehow, the story was starting to feel real. The following morning, Sophia Alvarez woke to the sound of quiet footsteps in the hallway. The mansion was busier than usual. Florists carried boxes of white lilies. Tailors unpacked suits. The staff moved quickly, preparing for another Reed Foundation gala. It would be her first major event since the marriage. At breakfast, Alexander Reed mentioned it casually, as if it were a routine meeting. "The gala is tonight. You will attend with me," he said, sipping his coffee. Sophia hesitated. "Will everyone from the company be there?" "Board members, investors, journalists," he replied. "It will be public. The purpose is to silence rumors." She nodded slowly, her pulse quickening. "What if I make a mistake?" "You will not," he said. "You have practiced enough." That afternoon, Clara helped her dress in a deep sapphire gown that shimmered under light. When Sophia looked in the mirror, She almost did not recognize herself. The woman staring back looked confident, graceful, untouchable. But inside, her stomach twisted with nerves. When the car arrived at the hotel ballroom, camera flashes burst like fireworks. Alexander offered his arm, steady and composed. "Remember," he murmured. "Just breathe." Oh. They entered the ballroom together. The chandeliers glowed gold. Music floated from the orchestra, and hundreds of eyes turned toward them. A man from the press approached, microphone in hand. "Mr. Reed, this is your first appearance with your new wife. How does it feel?" Alexander smiled politely. "It feels right." The reporter turned to Sophia. "Mrs. Reed, the public is curious. Many say your relationship is unconventional. What would you say to that?" Sophia met the reporter's gaze, her voice calm. "Sometimes life gives us choices we do not expect. What matters is not where you start, but how you stand beside someone when the world is watching." There was a pause, then applause from a few nearby guests. Alexander's expression softened almost imperceptibly. As the night went on, Sophia mingled, answered questions, laughed at polite jokes. She noticed the way people's tone changed from condescending curiosity to reluctant admiration. Later, while the orchestra played a slow tune, Alexander found her near the balcony doors. "You surprised them?" he said quietly. "I surprised myself," she replied. He glanced toward the dance floor. "One dance?" Sophia blinked, unsure. "We agreed on no unnecessary gestures. Tonight," he said, "pretend there are no rules." He held out his hand. For a moment she hesitated, then placed her hand in his. The music swelled as they stepped into rhythm. Under the soft lights, Alexander's voice lowered. "You handled yourself with grace. My board members are impressed. They will not question us again." Sophia smiled faintly. "So I passed your test?" He paused, looking at her face. It was not a test. It was a reminder. Of what? That not everything needs to be calculated. Oh. For a brief second, the world around them faded, the noise, the flashes, the expectations. It was only the two of them, swaying gently beneath the chandeliers. When the music ended, Alexander stepped back, his expression unreadable. "You did well tonight. You made me proud." "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As they left the ballroom, Sophia looked up at the night sky through the glass ceiling. For the first time, she felt she truly belonged beside him. But deep down, a quiet thought lingered. What would happen when 6 months ended, and the contract that bound them was no longer enough? The morning after the gala, the mansion felt strangely quiet. Sofia Alvarez sat by the window in the breakfast room, stirring her coffee without drinking it. The applause and lights from the night before still echoed faintly in her mind. She had expected to feel proud, but instead she felt unsettled, like she had crossed an invisible line between pretending and feeling. Alexander Reed entered the room, already dressed for work in a charcoal suit. He looked rested, confident, every movement precise. "Good morning," he said simply. "Good morning," she replied, glancing up. "You were remarkable last night," he added. "Even my mother called to say she was impressed." Sophia smiled faintly. "I did not realize I was being tested by your entire family." "They test everyone," he said. "You passed." He set down a small velvet box on the table. Inside was a diamond bracelet, elegant, understated. "Consider it a thank you for saving the company's reputation." Sophia hesitated before touching it. "You do not have to give me gifts. This arrangement is already more than generous." "It is not a gift," he said quietly. "It is acknowledgement." Their eyes met for a moment, and something unspoken passed between them, something neither of them was ready to name. Later that week, Alexander invited her to accompany him to the company headquarters. "If people see you beside me," he said, "they will stop asking questions." The building rose tall over downtown Chicago, glass and steel gleaming under the sunday. As they stepped into the lobby, employees turned discreetly to stare. Sophia walked close to Alexander, every inch of her posture trained, but her heart raced. Inside the elevator, she whispered, "Do they all know?" "Most of them," he replied, "but they do not know the details. That is how I prefer it." When the doors opened, a man was waiting, Damian Reed, Alexander's cousin. He was younger, charming on the surface, but his smile never reached his eyes. "So this is the famous Mrs. Reed," he said. "I must say, cousin, your taste is unconventional." Sophia forced a polite smile. "It is nice to meet you." "I am sure it is," Damien said smoothly. "Though I cannot help but wonder how much of this is real." Alexander's expression hardened. "Enough. You have work to do." After Damien left, Sophia looked at Alexander. "He does not like me." "He likes no one," Alexander said, his tone clipped. "Do not let him get under your skin." But Sophia could sense tension there, something deeper, older, unfinished. That evening, after returning home, Alexander seemed distant. He spent hours in his study, leaving Sophia to wander through the quiet halls. She ended up in the art gallery wing, where portraits of past Reed family members lined the walls. Their painted eyes seemed to follow her, cold and watchful. When Alexander finally appeared, his jacket draped over one arm, he looked tired. "You should not be in here," he said gently. "This room holds too many ghosts." Ghosts of what?" "Expectations," he said, almost to himself. They walked together toward the garden, the night air cool and still. Sophia broke the silence first. "Why do you keep everyone at a distance? Even people who care about you?" He glanced at her. "Care is a currency, Sophia. People spend it to get what they want." "Not everyone," she said softly. "Some people give it because it feels right." He stopped, turning toward her. "And which kind are you?" She hesitated. "I do not know yet." For the first time, Alexander smiled, small, genuine, unguarded. "Then perhaps we will both find out." As the days passed, their routines began to shift. They shared breakfast without awkward silence. He asked about her sketches. She started leaving small notes on his desk, reminders about meetings or a quote she thought he might like. It became a quiet rhythm, something that felt almost like a life together. But the world outside their walls was less forgiving. Rumors about the maid-turned-wife circulated online. Tabloids hinted at scandal. At dinner one night, Sophia found her photo printed on the front page of a magazine under the headline, "The Contract Bride?" She froze, holding the paper. "Alexander, did you see this?" He read the article briefly, then folded it. "They have nothing solid. Ignore it." "I cannot ignore it," she said, her voice trembling. "They are mocking you, mocking us." "They are mocking me," he corrected. "You have done nothing wrong. But I am the reason this started." He looked at her then, his gaze steady. "You are also the reason I can stand it." The words silenced her. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. For a moment, everything around them, the press, the rumors, the 6-month clock disappeared. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the dark glass windows. Sophia realized that for the first time since signing that contract, she did not feel like an employee pretending to be someone's wife. She felt like herself seen, valued, and alive. Yet deep down, she knew peace never lasted long in this house. Somewhere behind the calm, a shadow was waiting to move. A week after the article broke, the noise of gossip had started to fade, but something else had changed in the Reed mansion. Sophia Alvarez could feel it in the way Alexander Reed looked at her, softer now, almost protective. The lines on his face seemed less like armor and more like shadows of a man learning how to breathe again. Late one evening, Sophia found him in the glass-walled conservatory. He stood alone among the plants, the city lights glowing faintly behind him. She hesitated at the doorway. "You did not come to dinner," she said quietly. "I was not hungry," he replied. "Meetings all day." "Oh, Ben, you work too much." He smiled faintly. "I was going to say the same to you. You are still up sketching at 2 in the morning." She walked closer, her heels soft against the marble floor. "Sketching helps me think. It makes the world smaller, quieter." Alexander turned to her, his voice low. "Do you ever wish for something different?" She met his gaze. "Different how?" "A life not built on deals and signatures. Something that feels real." Sophia hesitated. "Every day." "MZer." He exhaled, setting his glass aside. "When I was younger, I wanted to be an architect. My father said it was beneath the Reeds. He sent me to business school instead. I built an empire, but I never built anything that belonged to me." Sophia studied him for a moment. "Maybe you still can." Alexander looked at her as if hearing something he had forgotten long ago. The silence stretched between them, heavy but warm. Rain began tapping against the glass ceiling. She turned to leave, but he stopped her gently. "Stay," he said. They stood side by side, watching the storm outside. For the first time, the distance between them did not feel impossible. Over the following days, small gestures replaced words. He began taking coffee in the kitchen instead of the study. He waited for her after her hospital visits. Once, when her car broke down on the way home, he arrived himself instead of sending the driver. "You could have just called for help," she told him. "I did," he said. "I called myself." They laughed then, an easy sound neither of them had expected. At night, she often painted in the quiet of her room. One evening, she left a canvas unfinished on the easel, a sketch of the garden bathed in morning light. The next day, she found Alexander standing before it, hands in his pockets. "It is beautiful," he said. "It looks like hope." "It is not finished," she replied. "Neither are we," he said softly. His words hung in the air, neither of them willing to move first. But peace never lasted long in the Reed household. Later that week, Sophia overheard voices in Alexander's study, sharp, low, and angry. Damien's tone carried through the half-open door. "You think the board will let this farce continue? You married a maid, Alexander. The investors are losing patience." "She is my wife," Alexander said firmly. "And the company is thriving." "Oh, not for long," Damien hissed. "Sooner or later, people will know what this really is, a contract built on desperation." Sophia stepped back before they could see her. Her chest tightened. The words struck deeper than she wanted to admit. A contract built on desperation. That night, she could not sleep. She sat by the window, the ring glinting faintly in the moonlight. Somewhere in the darkness of that vast house, she knew a truth was unfolding, one that would test everything she had come to believe about him and about herself. The following morning, the mansion felt heavier than usual. Sofia Alvarez woke to hushed whispers in the hallway and the faint hum of voices downstairs. Something was wrong. She dressed quickly and followed the noise toward Alexander Reed's study. The double doors were half open. Inside, Alexander stood behind his desk, surrounded by board members. Damien Reed was there too, his smile sharp and deliberate. One of the men held a printed document in his hand. "The story has already gone public, Alexander. Someone leaked the contract." Sophia froze. The word echoed through her chest. Contract. Alexander's jaw tightened. "Where did it come from?" Damien shrugged casually. "Does it matter? The press has copies. Every outlet in the city is calling this a fraud. A fake marriage. Investors are furious." The room buzzed with tension. Alexander's voice dropped low. "Get out, Damien. I am not the problem here," Damien replied, smirking. "She is." His gaze slid toward Sophia, standing in the doorway. The maid who became Mrs. Reed. It was always a matter of time. Sophia stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. "You did this." Damien's grin widened. "Business is about truth, sweetheart. Maybe you should have stayed in your place." "Oh." Alexander moved quickly, shoving Damien's shoulder. "Enough." Security arrived before the argument could go further. The board dispersed, whispering among themselves. When the doors finally closed, only Alexander and Sophia remained. He ran a hand through his hair, the calm that usually defined him breaking apart. "They will spin this into a scandal. Every headline will call you a liar." Sophia's voice cracked. "They are not wrong, Alexander. It was a lie." He turned sharply. "It started as one, but it is not anymore." She shook her head. "You do not understand. I heard everything yesterday. Damien was right about one thing. I was desperate, and you used that." His expression faltered. "I never meant to." "But you did," she said. "You bought my name, my dignity, my silence, and I let you." "Sophia, listen to me," he said, stepping closer. "You were the only person who saw me as more than a company. I never expected to feel—" "Do not say it," she interrupted. "Not now. Not when everything we built was based on a contract." The silence that followed felt endless. Finally, she took off her ring and set it gently on his desk. 6 months, she whispered. "That is what we agreed on. Maybe this is where it ends." Alexander stared at the ring but did not reach for it. "If you walk away now, Damien wins. This was never about winning, she said. It was about surviving. Without another word, she turned and left the room. Outside, flashes from reporters' cameras filled the front gates. News vans lined the driveway. Headlines were already spreading. Reed marriage exposed as fraud. Sophia walked past them, ignoring the shouts and questions. The rain began again, soft at first, then steady. She did not look back at the mansion, not even once. Upstairs, Alexander stood by the window watching her leave, the weight of everything crashing down. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. The empire he built no longer mattered. The only thing that did was walking away in the rain, and he had no idea how to bring her back. 3 days passed. The storm that had followed Sofia Alvarez from the Reed mansion had not eased. Every news channel replayed the same footage. The headlines, the photographs, the betrayal. She turned off the television in her small rented apartment, her eyes red from lack of sleep. She had returned to the only place she could afford, a narrow space above a flower shop in the south side of Chicago. The city noise filled the nights, but it was better than the silence that haunted her dreams. At St. Mary's Hospital, her mother was recovering well. Sophia smiled when she visited, but the smiles never reached her eyes. "You look tired," her mother said. "I am fine," Sophia answered softly. "Just working things out." Her mother squeezed her hand. "If the world is against you, let it be. You know who you are." That evening, Sophia walked home under the flickering streetlights, clutching her coat against the wind. She missed him more than she wanted to admit. The rain on the pavement reminded her of the first night he had offered her that impossible deal. Across the city, Alexander Reed stood on the stage of the Reed Foundation's press conference. The hall was filled with cameras, reporters, and shareholders demanding answers. He adjusted his tie, his expression calm but resolute. "I called this conference," he began, "to speak for myself and for the woman who should never have been dragged into this storm." Reporters leaned forward. Flashbulbs burst. "Yes, the marriage began as a contract," he continued. 6 months. Business terms. Conditions. It was my idea. I thought it was control, but what I found was truth. Sofia Alvarez did not deceive anyone. I did. The room fell silent. I used the agreement to protect my company, but she protected me from myself. I will not let her name be tarnished because of my arrogance. Damien Reed's actions, his leaks, his false claims, are now under legal review. He paused, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. If integrity still means something to this company, let it begin today with honesty. A reporter called out, "Where is your wife now?" Alexander looked out at the crowd. "Hopefully, somewhere safe. But if she is watching, I want her to know this. I did not marry her for business. I am still in love with her, even if she never believes another word I say." The press erupted with questions, but Alexander stepped away from the podium, ignoring them all. The next morning, Sophia woke to the sound of her phone vibrating. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of messages. She hesitated before pressing play on a video link a friend had sent. It was the full recording of Alexander's conference. When she heard him say her name, her breath caught. For a long time after the video ended, she sat in silence, tears slipping down her cheeks. That afternoon, she returned to St. Mary's Hospital with a bouquet of white tulips. Her mother smiled knowingly. "He spoke from his heart, did he not?" Sophia nodded slowly. "Yes, he did." Her mother squeezed her hand gently. "Then maybe it is time you speak from yours." As she walked out into the fading light, Sophia realized the storm had finally broken. The rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, new, and full of possibility. She did not know what waited at the end of the road, but she knew she had to see him one more time, if only to tell him that truth had found her too. A week later, the gallery lights glowed warm against the evening air. The sign outside read, "Open Hands." The name, Sofia Alvarez, had chosen for her first art exhibition. Inside, the walls were lined with her paintings, scenes of quiet hope, city skylines in rain, hands reaching toward light. Every piece told a story of struggle and grace. Guests wandered through the room, murmuring softly. It was the first time Sophia had allowed herself to stand in a space that was entirely her own. The chaos of the past months felt distant now, softened by time and purpose. She wore a simple ivory dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. When the door opened behind her, she turned and froze. Alexander Reed stood there, dressed in a dark suit. No tie this time. His expression unsure for the first time she had ever seen. The crowd seemed to fade as he stepped closer, holding a small velvet box in his hand. "Sophia," he said quietly, "you look like yourself again." "I did not expect you to come," she replied. "I almost did not," he admitted, "but I could not stay away." She looked at him carefully. "The company?" "Stable," he said. "Damien is gone. The board reinstated the foundation, but none of that matters anymore." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was not heavy, it was tender, filled with everything they had not said. He opened the box. Inside was the same simple gold ring she had left on his desk. Polished, the engraving newly added inside. "For all the days we were not pretending," Alexander's voice trembled slightly. 6 months were supposed to be enough to save my company. Instead, they saved me. I came here to ask you something, not as a contract, not as a promise to anyone else, just to you. Sophia's breath caught. "Alexander?" He took her hand gently. "Stay with me. No rules, no conditions. Just real." Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice was steady. "You already know my answer." He smiled, relief and disbelief mingling at once. "Say it anyway." "I am not leaving," she whispered. The guests around them began to applaud softly, as if sensing the quiet closure unfolding in front of them. Alexander slid the ring onto her finger once more. This time, there were no signatures, no witnesses, only truth. Later that night, after the gallery emptied, they stood together beneath the city lights spilling through the windows. Sophia leaned her head against his shoulder. "Do you ever think about how strange it all was? How it started?" He laughed quietly. "Every day. I offered a stranger a deal and ended up finding home." She smiled. "Then maybe not so strange after all." Outside, a gentle rain began to fall, the kind that carries no storm, only renewal. Alexander reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining. The sound of rain against the glass echoed softly, like the beginning of something permanent. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by her art and his heart finally unguarded, Sophia realized the truth she had been searching for all along. Love had never been the part of the contract, they had written it themselves. Fade out, 2 hands, steady and sure, resting side by side. The story that began as an arrangement ended as a promise, real, lasting, and free.